Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the iTel Insider. My name is Aaron Thomas, VP of Marketing here at iTel Networks for another great edition of the podcast, iTel Insider. Joined with me is Dan Rink, the CEO of iTel Networks. Dan, how are you?
Great, thanks, Aaron. Really excited about today's piece. Really passionate about the Peplink product and the things they're doing in the SD-WAN realm. So, looking forward to diving in and talking with Travis.
Awesome. And as you can see, we have a member here from the Peplink family. He's a product manager at Peplink. It is Travis Durick. Travis, how are you?
Doing great, Aaron. Dan, thanks for having me.
Awesome. We are excited today to talk about Peplink and to talk about the impact from a technology and a connectivity point of view that Peplink is bringing all over the world globally, and especially in Canada and the US, where we actually touch it a lot more than some other products. We're very passionate about it. So first, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been with Peplink, and then love to know a little bit more about Peplink.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I'm a product manager at Peplink, but I didn't start out as a product manager. I've been with the company, I think, like 16 years. I'm not sure exactly. So it's been a long run already. I started out doing citywide Wi-Fi networks way back in the early 2000s, and kind of through that experience, I found my way to Peplink, which had a Wi-Fi product line at the time that did exactly what I needed, and that's how I found Peplink. But after a couple of years as a customer, we formed a good relationship and a good rapport, and so I started working directly for them. And that's kind of when cellular technologies really started to take off on the data side. And so I got to jump on right away as kind of the 2G networks were live, and then seeing products come out in the 3G and 4G world. Now, of course, 5G. So it's already been a lot of G's at Peplink now in the years that I've been there, but it's just yeah, it's still awesome to see what people are doing. It's still exciting, and it still just kind of captivates my imagination. So yeah, it's been quite a few years, but it doesn't feel like that, I guess.
So you've seen the transformation from 2G all the way to 5G, where we are today. So you've kind of seen it all from a technology point, from the kind of where we are now from where we were 16 years ago. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the cellular thing kind of started out as an experiment, honestly, quite a long time ago, but it just kept getting more and more popular and kept working. And so, here we are. It's really the majority of what we do now today. And so
Hmm.
it's been fun to see that evolution.
Yeah, no, definitely. And before I get into the, how iTel, and maybe Dan will give a little bit more preference on how iTel became a partner with Peplink, maybe walk us through a little bit of the history of Peplink. Like, how long has the company been around? Did it always start off from the connectivity point of view? Was it a certain specific niche that and where it got to today? I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah, I think, Peplink's story started out in the early 2000s. I can't remember the exact first year, but again, kind of post that dot-com bubble wave there, and really started out in two forms, focusing on Wi-Fi connectivity and just general, multi-WAN connectivity. So, back then DSL was kind of the main broadband service technology out there. And so, there were speed limits and things like that. And so combining multiple broadband links and then turning around and producing that into reliable long range Wi-Fi was really kind of the two things that Peplink focused on then. And, admittedly, it's a lot the same today, right? We've got similar technology, basically the same technology, but, using much faster connections, many more connection types available. But really it all started on that premise of like no single link is going to be reliable enough to do what a business needs to do in a modern world. And so that story still is the same today. And so, here we are. It's just 5G instead of DSL, but that makes it even more, I think, approachable to people too. These connection types make this much more capable now today.
Yeah, and much more easy to rapidly deploy and deploy efficiently, or even in a pinch. So it's
Yeah.
technology is enabling mobility in a big way, automatic failover, so a lot of the features that we really love about the Peplink product. But
Yeah, Dan,
That's,
speaking about that, how did iTel get introduced to Peplink? Was this a product that, early on in the days of iTel and the infancy, that you said, "Hey, I'd love to be with a partner like this, a manufacturer like this," or was it something that was that aha moment where you met and you saw the product firsthand, and it was like, oh no, this could solve a whole bunch of answers for the things
Yeah,
that.
no, it was really probably, I think, about 3 years ago now, I believe, and it was coincided with SD-WAN. So we were pushing big into the SD-WAN market. Traditionally before SD-WAN, we were doing a lot of big MPLS and just multi-site broadband deployments. And but as we moved into doing managed SD-WAN for our clients, we were looking for additional means of connectivity beyond DSL and cable, right? So um, one of the big value props of SD-WAN is you can take a mishmash of different connectivity types and have it intelligently route across them and use the bandwidth in a smart way. And LTE is a really wonderful way to have something that, if a truck hits the pole outside and rips off the cable and the telco, you're going to be down, right? Like a single hit can take down everything. Single hit can't take down 5G. And so 5G is a really wonderful failover medium, and it's also very cost efficient because when you don't use it, if you have it sitting there in failover mode, you really don't pay anything, right? Like the cost is, the modem, a little bit of licensing, and then the service itself is pretty negligible when you're not using it. But we were looking for a partner that could check a few boxes. One of them, had 5G modems available at the time. 5G was a big thing. Our clients were very interested in it. The speeds that it brought, being 150 meg plus, made it comparable to a cable connection or a DSL connection, made it be a viable failover for a branch office. We were really interested in a partner who had dual SIM modems because we work with all the carriers in Canada, and we wanted to be able to automatically fail between carriers because even LTE carriers have massive outages, like as we've seen in Canada over the last few years. That was an important piece because we wanted to be able to allow our customers to sort of pool across carriers and not worry about which carrier they're using, just use the best carrier. And Peplink checked that box. Ability to mass provision and obviously mass control, mass update firmware was really important, and a lot of vendors didn't have a polished product for that was sort of enterprise ready. Peplink with their in control portal, it's really easy to manage 100,000 multi-thousand site deployments. You can at a couple clicks mass change, mass config change configurations, a dream in it. And then the multi-cell bonding. So they were one of the only companies we looked at the time who had a product that did cell bonding really well. So we've been doing circuit bonding for, I don't know, 5-6 years with a few different SD-WAN products where we're bonding cable DSL, but none of them handled the variable latency of LTE very well at all, right? Most of them do an initial measurement of the connection, and with DSL and cable, your latency metrics are fairly stable. With LTE, it changes throughout the day, right? As there's more users in an area, more attenuation, the speed can fluctuate, the latency can fluctuate. And the other products in the market didn't do a great job of it, whereas the Peplink team has really put a lot of effort into properly measuring the different variables and producing a product that can actually truly bond cellular in a really, really compelling way. So, if you're trying to hit a minimum speed target for your failover, let's say you have, you got a half a gig primary and you want to use cellular as a failover medium, well, you want that to be close as you can to the half a gig so your user experience doesn't degrade. You can fix that by bonding 3, 4, 5 cellular modems across multiple carriers using Peplink really efficiently. The other thing we found really early working with the Peplink team was that they have a very large development team, and as features or fixes are needed, they're very, very quick to roll those out, and they really listen to their customers and they adapt really quickly, which is very refreshing in this industry. And there's a litany of more reasons why we picked Peplink as a major partner for specifically augmenting our cellular product mix, but those are some of the primary ones.
Oh, wow, that's great. And Travis, just to piggyback on what Dan was saying,
Mhm.
we hear a lot when we think Peplink, we think SD WAN, right? So, what is the view of Peplink when it comes to SD WAN? How do you see that market today? And then, I guess, how does your technology view that market in a year or 2 years from now?
The question's great because I think the term is kind of speaks to what we see as part of the problem is in that SD-WAN is this technology and it's great, powerful technology, right? It lets you take multiple links and, back them up and, get the benefits out of, get basically, synergies that you couldn't do with individual links. But it's kind of an exclusive term, right? It's really only something that the enterprise market has seen so far, right? There's only been products really targeting those like top tier Fortune 100 companies, and makes sense. They had the money and the need to do those things. But, this is technology that benefits any business, frankly, right? This isn't something that only is beneficial to big businesses. It's just kind of only been priced into something that only they can afford. And so, again, we see this as something that every business needs. And so that's kind of our view on the market, is we need to make this a lot more available and approachable to any business out there, right? So bringing that all the way down to, a pizza chain, right? They don't need a $15,000 SD-WAN appliance from a traditional vendor. They need a $1,000 5G device that can allow them to seamlessly fail over. And so we see a huge opportunity in the market because it really hasn't been addressed from a big picture standpoint. It's just been the big players so far.
And then when you think about moving forward, and you think about, you went from 4G, 3G, and all the way now to 5G. So where do you view that space in the next, like I said, 2 to 5 years, let's just say?
Yeah, it's fun because every time there's a new G that comes out, we get the same question like, oh, well, now that's going to be 5G. So we really don't need bonding and speed fusion anymore, do we? Right? You don't need that anymore. You've got this gigabit thing over the air. And so there's always this kind of initial of like, oh, that's obsolete. We don't need that tech anymore. And then, every time the new generation rolls out, it's more capable, it is faster, but it's still not guaranteed, right? It still has those fluctuations. It's a shared wireless medium, just like it's always been. And so that need for consistency doesn't go away with 5G. It's even more present because the speeds are there to support these applications finally, but that consistency is just not there. And so it's just that one little piece that they're missing. And so we're able to be that piece. And since we've really focused on, like you said, Dan, optimizing for these wireless connections, the properties of those networks, that's technology that keeps being relevant, right? As these new generations come out, those are lessons learned that we get to apply and, make even more relevant on 5G and in these satellite constellations. So
Yeah. And I mean, I would say too, Peplink is doing a great job more recently of going beyond just being a cellular modem provider. So when you think SD-WAN, it isn't just 4G, 5G. That's just the commodity broadband piece, that the routing intelligence and the management capabilities and the dashboarding, and even some of the more recent things they're doing, like having Docker built right into devices so that you can push edge content right to the modem on the site. Those are compelling features for a lot of customers, and depending on the need, like it's great for small business, but it's also really great for enterprise. Like we've
yeah,
in the last year done deployments for multi-thousand site customers in the restaurant industry, where we're no longer having to have a second NID in a lot of cases if the use, depending on the use case. So we can forego the really expensive SD-WAN appliance, and the Peplink modem itself can ingest the cable and the DSL, handle the automatic failover, bond it with cellular, do the intelligent routing based on applications, smooth out bad latency. All that stuff can be done right on the modem because it is itself an SD-WAN device.
mm-hmm.
Um, and in future, people will be able to have that single device, and not even in the future, actually right now, and be pushing virtualization and applications that they need right to it, right? So this single device is acting as your on-site server, your connectivity, it's doing a lot of things for you at a really great price point.
Yeah. I mean, we've got, like you said, we've got customers running, simple little, Python scripts on these devices, but we've also got customers running at full Windows operating systems on some of these devices too. And, they've got good business reasons for doing that, right? It's not just a novelty.
Mm-hmm.
It
Oh,
streamlines a
absolutely.
bunch of things for people. And so, yeah, it's more than just that 5G or that SD-WAN. It's like, I think you said, kind of putting these things together.
Yeah, and I mean, in future, I see a lot of application where you have a lot of the sort of top SD-WAN vendors who are maybe doing slightly more in the security realm,
Hmm.
but they're all coming out with Docker images and virtualized appliances, which are going to be able to run right on the Peplink hardware, right? So you'll be
Yep.
able to take your FortiGate virtual security appliance, load it right on a Peplink BR2 with, dual or three 5G modems embedded, and have that all in one nice little package, taking in all your different connections, all your failover, and giving you your security layer. So it's from that perspective, I think Peplink's doing the right things in the industry to make hardware that is, well targeted for where the market's going.
Yeah, for the highest end enterprise, we don't expect to be the security vendor, the routing vendor, the everything vendor, right? We
Yeah.
know we're going to excel at bonding links, combining links, giving them seamless failover strategies. And if they've got another vendor they prefer on security, our architecture plays very nice with that and integrates well with
Hmm.
those scenarios. And so, yeah, like you said, Dan, it's not just small or big. There's ways
Yeah.
to use this for both and
Yeah, and
appropriate.
it plays really nicely that way, and we're often doing that. We're using a Meraki or FortiGate for SD-WAN just because of the additional security functionality, and then right behind it is a Peplink providing a litany of ways out to the internet. Because a lot. I mean, you look at Meraki, they can only handle two WAN connections, right? So if you're
Yeah.
consuming both those WAN connections with a fiber and a cable secondary, well, then you've got nothing left for your multicellular failover.
Yeah, we have tons of customers that they plug their router into our router only to run an IPsec tunnel through our
Yeah.
Peplink device, right? We're bonding multiple links. IPsec can't do that. And so they're running a tunnel through our tunnel, and
Yep.
that's fine. That's a great use case too.
Tunnel inception.
Yep. It's kind of wild that's like a practical use case, but it really is. Like
Yeah,
it
when
solves
you see
problems.
that a lot more these days, like where you have circuits being bonded, and then there's a tunnel, and then you have another tunnel, and then the customer's IPsec tunnels, or and your MTU's getting pretty small, but a lot of the technology is adapting to fix that in a lot of ways. But
Yeah, it's
uh,
kind of like it's
security is a big thing.
it's a
So
deep technology thing, but
yeah,
the end result is the customer has a really seamless solution to their problem, right? They don't have to change anything. They get a nice, clean, easy solution, and
yeah,
that's more things to dig into and research in the background. But
yeah, for
And
sure.
let's just say, Travis, if you're sitting there and someone like a really someone who's an IT professional is watching this right now, and they're going to say, okay, well, Peplink does this from a technology perspective. Like, what is that major explanation, that major value prop from a technology point of view that you could say that Peplink does? Let's just say that it does different than everyone else.
I think the simple thing, the simple way to say it is we're going to make your Zoom, your Teams, your voice over IP calls seamless, better audio, better video quality, right? That's what our product does. And most products out there don't do that, right? Most failover products, everything breaks, everything lives and dies by one connection quality, and then it can hand off automatically, but interrupted to a
Hmm.
different connection. And so we bring that seamless, make your connection better experience to anybody. And so again, that's something maybe the highest end enterprises had access to before, that make your stuff better experience, but we make that much easier to deploy.
Just to build on that, Aaron, like, so there's a lot of products that just bond bandwidth, right? And what they're doing is making bigger circuits, but often sacrificing for latency or jitter or quality in doing it. Peplink has put a lot of thought into having a lot of different algorithms, and things like WAN smoothing, for instance, where instead of saying I only care about top line bandwidth, if what I actually care about is quality, I can send the same packet out multiple links and take whichever one arrives first and fastest, right? So if I'm doing something like streaming video in the field, right, I don't care if I have 100 meg because my video stream is only 12 meg. I care that I have 12 meg that has low latency and no loss so that my video stream is perfect, right? And that kind of logic can be really controlled in the Peplink, and can be controlled not just like globally, but per application. So I can say I want video streaming to use WAN smoothing, but I want this other thing to use the proper just full bonding because I need lots of speed for that. Um, and there's a lot of tweaks that really it lets you solve for connectivity in the digital desert, right? As you head out and you're in places where you need more and more connections to make big connections that are of high quality. Peplink has done a great job of making really the ultimate platform for doing that. Some of the more recent stuff with the ability to do the virtual WAN ports on any port and ingest as many WAN connections as you want. Like, very innovative. Almost every other SD-WAN solution has X number of WAN ports, and that's it, right? Like, you have a primary and the ability to maybe toggle one port to be a WAN. Peplink, every port can become a WAN port.
And then what about and Travis, what about the management side of Peplink? Because I went on site one time it was at a retail shop, and we were basically looking at a failover solution. And I was very impressed with the way that we were able to get almost instant access to kind of seeing everything that was going through the back end of that unit that was going in, how the failover was going quickly, how you can control everything. So what's the thought process from Peplink, and how you research and how you put the development into creating a world class dashboard back end system that will allow companies like iTel, companies similar to us, but also end users to go in there and have full access to the technology?
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on what I see are the big pieces is, there's you folks, the operators, and so you have to use it and it has to make sense to you and do, streamline the way you do business, but it also has to be something that your customers can, get access to and use as, a portal, a visible way to see, what they're getting from you as a provider and, how their problems are being solved. So, I know we've had more tailored conversations with some of your customers. Like, I know there was one in the banking industry that, they weren't getting the visibility out of their core routing platform that they needed to detect locations that had kind of poor link qualities, where links were going up and down repeatedly, and they were kind of overly relying on cellular. And so they didn't have that reporting functionality in their solution, but we were able to give them some reports and in control through talking with the iTel engineers and the customers engineers, some small changes, and we were able to get them, really useful information for them to help, save themselves money actually. So yeah, we want everybody to be a user in there, and we want it to be something that it's not just an administration portal either necessarily, right? It's something that adds value to the solution overall.
Yeah. And I'll add, I think Peplink has done a great job of that. Like, in our customer base, we have customers self-serving, the ability to set bandwidth alerting thresholds, tons of notifications. Customers who are using it, as you pointed out, to just have better reporting on their own core network. So, the banking industry client example he gave, they didn't have a great way to know when their non-itel provided primary was down. In that case, we were providing just the 5G dual carrier failover. So they actually have the Peplink alerting to their NOC when it starts taking over traffic, right? So, like, they know their primary is down because the secondary says, hey, I'm active and pushing traffic now. And it's got a whole bunch of different webhooks and ways to push that data out, beyond just email. So that flexibility and ability to sort of have this advanced reporting and advanced notification engine is really powerful in the enterprise space and the small business space, right? Like,
Yep.
you want to know when your primary is down because you're starting to use more expensive cellular bandwidth, and you want alerting on that, and you want to get it fixed quickly. And that, like, for us as a managed service provider and ISP, having the ability to quickly alert to clients, send notifications, create triggers that tell them, your primary is down, reset it, check the power, make sure it works, so that we can dispatch efficiently. That's all information people care a lot about, and gives a very high level of visibility. And they do that in a way that's a lot easier for people to interface with than a lot of other companies do.
Is we're adding more functionality too, like just the ability to manage other devices, right? So you use our cloud to manage the Peplink routers, but now we've got the ability to go from that Peplink router and you can log into a Windows server or SSH into a device or use
Yeah,
maybe a legacy protocol like Telnet or Serial. So you
yeah.
can extend that functionality and get, again, more capability out of the Peplink, so you're not investing in remote management solutions for all these other things too. And
Yeah, I think you're talking about InTouch, right?
yeah, in touch, exactly.
Yeah, so that's a great example too. We've won major accounts because of InTouch, where the client was looking for easy ways to administer and have remote access to all their elements in case of a primary outage, right? So
Yep.
If they're running if they're running a virtual SD-WAN appliance and the server is unreachable externally, well, then you have a problem unless you have someone there physically. Peplink can interface via, as Travis pointed out, serial via InTouch, which lets you actually go to the remote web GUIs of every single element of your network and save them. So you can drill in and get access to network components, within your local LAN via the Peplink in case of a major issue, or just for ease of administration, right? And that is also a beautiful feature. And I think that sort of like points out the theme. They're just Peplink is really thinking ahead on what makes life easy for our customers and adds a lot of value beyond being a modem provider.
Yep.
So
Yeah. It's not just a modem, right? It's a platform.
It's truly a platform. Like it does so much at this point.
So question. So someone comes to iTel and they say, hey, listen, we need an SD-WAN solution. Maybe they don't say SD-WAN. Maybe they just say, we need a failover. We need this. We need this. Um,
Mhm.
at what point does the Peplink technology get brought into the conversation versus the actual service of what we would be bringing in? Like, is Peplink that important to the process, or is it more of like, okay, here, let's just solve for A. Now, to solve for A, we always recommend B.
It's a tool in the toolbox, and it's sort of like the Swiss Army knife of tools, I would say. So like when we have clients show up who we're architecting a large national SD-WAN, or we're at that point figuring out what the bandwidth needs are, what the availability in different broadbands are. We're going to get you a fiber primary and a cable secondary and 5G tertiary or failover sitting dormant. And then, as we look at it, they're wanting, asking us, how can I have easier access because my people are working from home now to remotely manage devices? And so then, as we go through this sort of thought experiment with the customer, dwelling into their needs, Peplink very often bubbles to the surface as the right solution because it's, here's the device that's going to handle all your out of band, handle all your remote access. It's going to handle the 5G failover. If you don't need advanced security functionality, we could actually eliminate the need for another expensive licensed SD-WAN solution. And we sort of our sales engineers go through that process of learning about the customer, and then often Peplink becomes, evident as the right solution for that customer in a huge variety of industries.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because we get deployed in a lot of different capacities with customers. In some deployments, we are just a modem, right? We are just a modem, and we're plugged into their firewall, and we're IP pass through, and we're not doing anything truly that special other than being a reliable 5G connection, right? But oftentimes we start there and then we grow into something more advanced, and the customer starts seeing, oh, this reporting is really nice, or this, what if we did this, right? That starts growing into a larger component of their overall solution.
Totally. And people start seeing too what else it could displace that they were planning on doing, right? Like,
Yep.
hey, I don't need to buy a Raritan anymore to do out of band. Well, that's going to save me this much, and I don't need to, for this small virtual appliance I was planning, I don't need to send a small server to the site anymore. That's wonderful, right? That's going to save me
Yep.
X, and I was going to do a basic SD-WAN device. I don't need security functionality, and now I don't even need that because this can ingest my two broadband connections and handle the failover and bonding for me, right? And so that as you go through that, you start to just eliminate more and more cost, more and more licensing, and it becomes more and more self-evident, that it's a great product. I think the biggest defining factor is just the security component. If you're looking for inline virus scanning and IPS, IDS security, then Peplink probably not the right solution for you. There's some solutions that are much stronger. That's not to say it doesn't. It has good firewall functionality, basic firewall functionality, but that to me is the biggest differentiator between some of the other SD-WAN appliances. Is they're deeper rooted in security and less rooted in integrated 5G and the ability to do huge numbers of connections.
Mm-hmm.
But as a result, they pair well together. Like I said earlier, like you can use the Peplink and all the power that the Peplink brings and just stick that in front of a security appliance.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, I know for security conscious customers, we really play well because our entire ecosystem can be run privately. So every component, every virtual physical device doesn't have to report to the internet. It doesn't have to use our hosted shared cloud. It can be run that private management experience. So it provides that same architecture compatibility for somebody who has that, ultimate security posture. But
Yeah, and as you look at like banking industry and industries like that, the ability to self-host the administration tools is quite powerful.
Two more questions for you from me, Travis. Number one, if you can give someone a sneak peek right now of a one piece of like a technology or a feature set that's like, hey, this is on our roadmap, it's coming soon, and you feel like it's really going to change or really help adapt to what you currently have in the marketplace right now.
so I think there's two things that are just always relevant to people, and that's price and performance, right? Let's, keep my costs low and keep my performance high. And so, those are two areas that we just constantly pour effort into. So, on the performance side, we're just again optimizing those algorithms. We're doing as much as we can to natively integrate with these new technologies like Starlink and leveraging their APIs and getting more and more visibility into how those connections behave and perform. But at the same time, giving customers tools to manage costs, and giving companies like iTel tools to manage their customers' costs, right? And so, I think we'll start to see more automation in those areas. We've built a lot of foundations for how to optimize performance and how to optimize costs, but trying to better automate, better alert, and make those things more automatic and actionable so that they do save people money and can better leverage these new technologies. I mean, when you've got high speed satellite, high speed 5G, you can do a heck of a lot of things that you couldn't do just a few years ago in terms of getting remote locations connected at enterprise standards, right? Reliable enterprise high bandwidth standards. That there's just a whole new world of possibilities, and these connections don't cost that much,
Yeah.
realistically compared to what people paid for landline circuits not that long ago. So
Yeah, no, completely agree. I mean, between LeoSat and 5G, you're getting to the point where you can deploy rapidly wirelessly basically anywhere in the planet. And
yep,
that in some of the newer stuff that Peplink has rolled out around like the eSIM and the eSIM bank servers and the ability to sort of globally push out virtual SIMs to their devices further enables that, right? Like
yep.
you can use these devices truly globally and just switch providers on the fly without having to even find a SIM.
I think the eSIM component is going to be one of the largest players in the next 16 months or so.
I mean, it brings a lot of value. We see a lot of value in it. We're that's a new thing that we're working with Peplink on is the ability for us to no longer have to deploy physical sims and be able to more rapidly change carriers. If carriers have better speed or better reliability in an area, to be able to just flip it. It's a commodity at this point. The cost to the carrier is roughly the same. We don't care whether it's Rogers, Telus, or Bell, or as you get in the States, AT&T, Verizon. Like, it doesn't matter who works the best, right? The gigs per dollar, the dollar per gig is roughly the
Yep.
same, and the ability to not have to worry about that. And if one of them fails, it's like eSIM rolled out, flipped over in a few seconds. It commoditizes that entire industry in a way that brings shifts the value to the consumer, right? Because otherwise, you deploy 1,000 site network with physical SIMs. That is who you're using, right?
Yep.
Like you're not going to go rip and replace. And in the industry, a lot of modems are single SIM modems where you have no choice. If that carrier's down, you're down. That's not the case with Peplink. You have huge flexibility in your carrier choice.
That's a great point. Yeah, once you have the equipment and you have those sims in there, it's not like you can easily log into the background of the dashboard, switch it out, and then you're onto another network, right?
Our NOC already uses it, right? Like if a customer has issue, like we've talked about this in sort of the failover scenario, but we have a lot of clients who are using 5G as a primary now too,
Yep.
because it's fast. We can deploy it with automatic carrier changing, like we've just been talking about. So like if Rogers goes down, it flips to Telus. If Telus has an issue, it flips to Bell. In that in itself, you're buying multiple connections in one device for one connection price, right? And that's a beautiful thing. So like we have a very large government client in BC where BC Lotteries, we do all their lottery terminals. that they're using 5G as the primary, right? And if there's an issue with the primary carrier, it auto toggles. If we have an issue with a SIM, we can push an eSIM now, right? Virtually push a new carrier, a new SIM, and it just makes it really, really elegant and easy, right?
Yeah, it's one of those like workhorse technologies that I think to an end customer won't really be visible, right? It's not going to change their day to day, but it will change their bill and the your ability to react and be nimble to their needs, so that
Yeah,
that
we
failover site that was on this low bandwidth plan, all of a sudden that link's not coming back up for a month. You can dynamically switch them to a fixed wireless high bandwidth plan, and you don't have to send anybody out. It's just click click and
yep,
everybody's good.
exactly.
So
Yep.
No, that's amazing. And then, so Travis, I think my last question to you. We've already run a little bit over 35 minutes here, which is great because this is a good conversation and I enjoy it very much. So my last question to you is, what do you want people to know from this conversation from a value perspective when it comes to Peplink and it comes to customers going to companies like iTel or turning around and saying, we need to make a decision from an IT perspective if we're going to work with an iTel. Why should they decide to work and use a product from Peplink? What's the value prop?
So I think the biggest thing is just, technology changes out there. This isn't like, there's a lot of new possibilities, but, it takes the right device and it takes the right know-how to kind of get the benefits out of those things, right? It's not easy to navigate this stuff on your own, I don't think, today for a consumer. And so having a provider and a device that's built for those needs is really the key. And so, it's easy to look and find just the cheapest modem out there and think that's going to do what you need, or to get the free device that comes from comes with the fixed wireless plan. But often those don't really solve the problem. And so, yeah, it's, knowing that it's not just a magic box, or it's not just somebody that's going to solve your problem. You need that combination of the capabilities and the.
To contrast too, I mean, those cheap devices you're talking about, where and a lot of people use them, where they're just rolled out, given to you by the carrier with a single SIM to lock you in. Those don't have security updates. They're huge security vulnerabilities actually in networks, because they sit there for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, become vulnerable. There's no central administration. There's no way to update the firmware. And often they go end of support, end of life very quickly, right? Because they're cheap commodity devices. One thing that I really appreciate about Peplink is they almost don't end of life devices. They keep rolling out support and updates for basically everything they've ever produced since the beginning. So in the newer model they have, they are providing hardware replacement and updates, and so like you really have full peace of mind when you're buying it, that you're going to have constant security fixes, constant updates, constant you're always going to be getting the latest and greatest cellular firmware rolled out as carriers change and there's new bands. Like all of that is centrally managed and centrally administered, whereas these sort of non-SD-WAN, non-centrally orchestrated products, you don't get that, right? Like it will continue to degrade and become a vulnerability in your network over time. And I think in the price difference, there isn't actually a big price difference, right? Like
Yeah.
there's really no reason, no intelligent reason to be using a single SIM carrier provided modem at this point. There's no value in it.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Dan, because it's that longevity piece, right? It's
Mhm.
there's no free lunch in this, right? Like, so you buy a device that's free or really, dramatically cheaper, like 50% cheaper, and something's got to give, right? Like you said,
Yeah.
there's probably not maintenance going on there. There's probably not forward development going on there, and so
Yep.
there's a
What
trade
what
off there, and it
what's
might
the
not be
cost
easy to
for how many
see.
times you're going to send a technician and a human to replace that or fix it or do something with it?
It's not easy math to see on the front end if you haven't done it before, but yeah.
When we're doing multi-hundred site deployments, I mean, the cost, if we were using low quality, devices that lock up all the time and need, physical access for updates and things like that, we would just be drowned in technician fees, right? And the amount of administration, project management, and disruption, it's you couldn't even do it. It would be impossible. So,
If you're going to do it right, you do it right the first time.
I mean, as my dad likes to say, there's the right way and there's the stupid way, right? And so I think using Peplink is the right way.
There you go. There's the tagline of the day. It's perfect. Travis, we appreciate everything. I mean, I think people can when they watch this, they'll know how much iTel, especially Dan, is an advocate and a champion when it comes to the Peplink product. And if anyone out there is looking to get some information on how you can help with your connect and how we can help with your connectivity needs, just please send us an email at sales@itel.com. Go to our website, itel.com, and take a look and get in contact with us. We would be happy to make sure that your Peplink router or the option for a Peplink router are up and running. And Travis, if anybody's watching and they want to know more about Peplink, where should they go?
Peplink.com, or we've got a great YouTube channel too. So there's tons of video content so you can see this stuff in action there. So I'd probably just go check out the YouTube, honestly.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you very much joining us today and going through this. And I thought it was a great way to hear all about Peplink and all about the technology there from yesterday and where it is today. It's always interesting to hear from 2G to 5G and now LeoSat and Starlink. I think is it's a great way to see where it was, where it is, and where it's going. So yeah, this has been a great edition of the iTel Insider for Dan Rink, CEO of iTel Networks. Aaron Thomas is my name, and I'm the VP of Marketing at iTel Networks. Big thank you to Peplink and to Travis for joining us today from Peplink. And we will see you next time on iTel Insider.
Thanks a lot, folks.